Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of understanding CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is AC L2-3.1.13. Employ cryptographic mechanisms to protect the confidentiality of remote access sessions. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical insights and strategies for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts, or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. Don't call me Shirley. We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC professional assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
And I gave Mike a hard time right before this podcast because I found out, as is the reference right before the intro music, that he's never seen the movie Airplane. Can you guys believe that?
Man, I'm so bad because I don't really watch that much TV. Ironically, I just watch YouTube all the time. That's like my version of TV. So I have all these movies that I have to catch up on.
Well, you need to go. You need to go watch Airplane. You're about 30 years too late on that one, but you need to go watch Airplane and report back to myself and to our listeners of how great a movie it is. They don't make movies like that anymore. So,
You got
Mike, other than the movie Airplane, this week we're talking about cryptographic mechanisms. This one seems a little less straightforward and a little more complicated. So let's get into it. Why is it important to employ cryptographic mechanisms to protect confidentiality?
Man, so and particularly confidentiality of remote access sessions. So employ cryptographic mechanisms to protect the confidentiality of remote access sessions. This is a very interesting control to me because you'd kind of think that it's sort of built into everything, and it sort of is. So it's pretty easy control to comply with, generally speaking. But then again, remember that the DoD and NIST, they can't predict when people will build their own systems. And so it's important for them to educate and mandate that certain baseline security is put in place. So, what is the importance of it? Well, look, if you have a remote session, you have to remember the way that the internet works is that there are packets that are sent through the internet, and there are all kinds of people listening. So, for instance, when you send a packet out of your computer across a network switch, that packet then basically gets multiplied and sent to every other port that's listening. That could be an attacker, could be anybody. And so if that packet is not encrypted, well, then what happens is that it can be opened up and read in clear text by whoever may be, listening to the packet. So it's not so straightforward that, just because you're, sort of communicating on the internet that you're okay. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. By default, you really should have everything encrypted. There was a big thing probably about 5 to 10 years ago where they changed and said, okay, if you have an HTTP website, we're going to block you. And if you have an HTTPS website, then you'll be okay. And that was like a Google search engine optimization thing. And Google basically moved and said, look, everything should be encrypted. And they were right, because it's just too easy to pick up traffic and sniff it on the internet using what's called a packet sniffer to be able to pull down those packets and see exactly what you're typing, what your password is, what information you're transmitting over the internet, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what this control is all about. It's just, I call it kind of like a reminder control. It's just reminding you that, hey, you need to think about all the different ways that you're doing remote access, and you need to make sure those methods are in fact encrypted.
Every time I hear the term packet sniffer, I think of dogs. I can't, I know it's a program, it's a thing, it's got nothing to do with bomb sniffing dogs, but I can't hear packet sniffing without thinking of dogs. And because German Shepherds are usually bomb sniffing dogs, a packet sounds smaller, so I think of like a Chihuahua, like a Chihuahua and a little police vest going up to these little tiny packets. But that's just me. I'm totally wrong.
Inside the head of Roman Gennaro.
That's just me. I'm totally wrong. You got little chihuahuas and police vest. Dude, you don't want to know what goes on in here sometimes.
See, I look at it and all I can think about is glue sniffing. So,
I think that's a little more concerning than.
Yeah, I'm just imagining some guy running around calling a little kid a glue sniffer.
Okay.
But no, it's a packet sniffer. Yeah, have you ever Have you seen the videos on YouTube of people using packet sniffing to sniff passwords? They're pretty interesting. If you're not an information security guy and you're listening to this podcast, which many people aren't, you can go on YouTube. You want to see how easy this is. Go to YouTube right now and just search for Wireshark packet sniffing attack. And you'll literally be able in 30 seconds to be transformed into a hacker. It's so easy. It's scary easy to do, which again is why this control exists.
If that's exactly what it sounds like, I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah.
Um, so let's get right to the nitty-gritty on this one. What are the key assessment points that an assessor will be looking for?
Yeah, so fortunately on this one, it's pretty easy to control the answer. They're not looking for a whole lot, but the first assessment point is that they're looking to determine if cryptographic mechanisms to protect the confidentiality of remote access sessions are identified. So have you identified, um, what the cryptographic mechanism is that's going to protect your remote access session? So, again, I'll just give the sample answer because it's probably easier to explain it backwards. But cryptographic mechanisms include 256-bit AES FIPS 140-2 compliant encryption required on the VPN. So in this example, they've got a VPN, and that's the tunnel that the remote access is going through. And we're specifically stating that there's going to be 256-bit AES FIPS 140-2 grade encryption. So that's the kind of answer that I would give, in terms of determining if the mechanism is identified. And we'd say, yes, you look in the firewall settings, wherever your VPN is hosted from, and those are going to be the settings that you're going to find there. Second assessment point is determine if cryptographic mechanisms to protect the confidentiality of remote access sessions are implemented. And of course, we're going to say, yes, it's implemented via the firewall settings, and maybe give them a printout of the settings, or you just do a little shoulder surfing with your assessor and let them see your firewall settings. So again, that's it. That's all they're really looking for. They're just looking to determine that, yes, you have it in place, which unless you've got a really customized solution, I don't really have a whole lot of scenarios to give you where it wouldn't be encrypted, which makes this a little easier to comply with.
Right. And I don't know how difficult this would be to enact. Maybe it's not. And if it's not, maybe you can tell us a story of an instance where this came into play. But what are the potential difficulties, if any, of enacting this one in your organization?
I think that the biggest one is if you're in an airport and you're joining a Wi-Fi network, which is effectively a remote access session, or maybe you're a Wi-Fi network and there's no encryption on it, and then you're remotely connecting into a computer. There is a capability to pick up on that signal and essentially, again, sniff it, which I know is now going to be our new favorite word. So, you can definitely grab all of those packets right off the internet line, and you can allow yourself to essentially decode and put those packets back together into useful information. Um, Anyone who has ever had their credit card defrauded or a credit card number stolen and then used against them for illegitimate purposes, they've probably experienced this somehow or another. The credit card number transfer may have gone through the air or may not have been protected via a cryptographic mechanism that could protect it from being copied. So not an unusual scenario.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the first answer you gave was airport, uh which is where they have what? Airplanes. You should watch Airplane.
Right. Everybody, you know what? Every year, if you're listening to this podcast tonight, you've got a Netflix and chill date with your special person to watch Airplane.
I mean, it's just one of the funniest. The 80s was the golden age of comedy movies. Like when I think about all my favorite comedy movies, they're all from the 80s. Ferris Bueller, Princess Bride, Airplane. It's just like
I mean, the
Bill and
80s were a
Ted,
really great time. I mean,
Bill
even
and
the
Ted. Yeah.
the
No.
music is the best.
Oh, Wild Stallions, come on. But
Bon Jovi.
other than this turning into a movie podcast, our favorite part of the podcast on a weekly basis is to do our silly question to kind of cut through kind of some of the more serious nitty-gritty stuff that we talk about on this podcast. So today we're not going to keep talking about Airplane, we promise, because there might be some of you out there that don't like that movie. You're wrong, but there might be some of you out there.
Nobody's perfect.
So, so this week's question is, Will employing cryptographic mechanisms encrypt my virtual karaoke performances so that nobody can see them and blackmail me later?
Yes, 100%. And you should do them often. Yeah, hey, look, that's the whole point, right? Is at the end of the day, what all of this, NIST SP 800-171 compliance stuff and DFARS and CMMC, what it's all about is keeping your information yours. And I think if you are not the type of person that wants your private karaoke performances to be spewed out on the internet, well, then you should definitely encrypt any mechanism of transfer that takes place along that performance. So I think it's an excellent piece of advice to definitely encrypt your candid karaoke features.
Quick, what's your go-to karaoke song?
Ooh, you know
Head to it
what?
right now.
I can tell you I do have one. My
Oh
my
boy.
go-to karaoke song, and it may take a few inspired beverages, is a little bit of Biz Markie. I will get up there and scream, "She's just a friend," because
Oh boy.
times where do you do karaoke? Probably in some Mexican bar, and who knows? Maybe it's wedding time, whatever it is. But let me tell you what, nothing wakes up a room like me singing Biz Markie, "She's Just a Friend," because that's just maybe the best song ever written. Again,
Yeah,
potentially, was that in the 80s or the 90s? Ooh, good
not
question.
sure. That's a good question. But for me, it shouldn't surprise anybody. It's gonna be from the man, the myth, the legend, the owner and operator of 1980s movie soundtracks, Mr. Kenny Loggins. From a little movie, well, from two movies. One, the title track, one from a little movie called Top Gun. It's either going to be Footloose or Danger Zone from
Oh
Mr.
yeah.
Kenny Loggins. If I got to get up there, we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, Danger Zone is such a classic. And
Oh,
just because we're talking about this, I was ironically I was at a wedding this weekend, and I don't know why this came up, but I came across this Jack Black clip with Jimmy Fallon where he breaks out the saxoboom. So,
yes,
yes,
yes. I
maybe
know
the
that clip. I'm
best
familiar with that clip.
maybe the best thing ever, which has nothing to do with 80s, 90s, or encryption whatsoever. But if you haven't seen this clip, just go search for Jack Black Saxa Boom, and it will make you smile. And that's what we're all about doing here on this podcast.
Well, that's two of my favorite people, Jack Black and Jimmy Fallon. So hey, like, but you know, uh, speaking of weddings, I always tell my friends I'm not much of a dancer, but if you want me to dance at any point during your wedding, play Footloose. That is the one song that will get me out of my seat. And the original Kenny Loggins version, not the remake by Blake Shelton. But I digress. Um, and on that note, after we're done talking about karaoke and 80s movies and how great that was, that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever evolving world of defense. We'd like to thank Mike for coming on and telling us about the importance of cryptographic mechanisms, his go to karaoke song, and the fact that he hasn't seen one of the greatest comedy movies ever made in the 80s. Thanks, Mike.
Always a pleasure, Roman.
Conversation doesn't end here. The conversation definitely is not over about movies. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast, or specific to this episode, the hashtag Airplane. I don't know. If you haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should definitely like, rate, subscribe, whatever it takes. That way you can fly in for the next episode.
All the things. By hitting the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, it lets you know when new episodes like this one are released. And who knows, on a future episode, we may hear that Mike has seen the movie and understands the reference. Don't call me Shirley.
Or just
Uh,
learn to play this, or just learn to play the saxophone.
There you go. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought provoking episodes and high quality content. Join us again on the next episode of Mission Compliance as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.